We got some shady business going on in the hobby, and we're going to talk about it next on the Ungraded Truth podcast. Detective Comics set a record for 1.8 million. Nobody really cares.
Who are annoyed that people are asking them questions, is this book banned? That question didn't exist a year ago.
Somebody's submitting like 25 vintage books and getting 15 9.9s.
We always think, how can it ever get crazier? And then it always does.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the #1 show in the entire universe, the Ungraded Truth podcast. I am Swaggle Haas, joined as always by the esteemed gentleman next to me. We got Rob, Neo Cards and Comics, Ryan, Automatic Comics, and Manu, the 99 Newsstand. Gentlemen, here we are, 4 shows in a row. We're killing it. We're dominating. No shady business going on with our podcast.
None.
It's amazing. There's always something to talk about, though. You know, like you give it like 2 weeks between. It's like it's that news cycle. It just keeps turning over. You know, it's always something new, always something fun.
Yeah, it's like that. What do you call it? You know, the things at the warehouses where you see it's been this many days since there has been an accident. It's like basically once you get to around 14 days, there's always a disaster in the collecting and card comic collectibles hobby. And we're definitely going to get into a few of them here today. Just going to give a quick shout out to everybody hanging out in the chat. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And I appreciate you guys tuning in here on an early edition of the show, which is the 4 p.m. edition. I don't really know if we're sticking to our 5 p.m. Saturday night time slots. It's been kind of what we've been building out. But, you know, we're sort of not committed to it. You know, we might still even change the theme song. I don't know. At this point, I kind of like the theme song. It's a bit of a banger to me. But at the same time, we're still in flex because we had to move the show up to 4 p.m. tonight because Manu and I have an event to go to. We're going to be at the San Francisco Comic Expo. Is that what it's called? San Francisco Expo After Party. Fan Expo.
Yeah.
So we had to, bump it up so that we can freshen up for the show. But we're still going to have a great show tonight. But before we get into there, a little other housekeeping stuff. Again, guys, the Ungraded Truth, as I already established at the beginning, is the #1 podcast in the nation, the fastest growing YouTube on the entire platform. Last week, we were at 327 subscribers. Now we are at 485 subscribers. That is an increase of 10 million%. But we still need to hit our main goal, which is to get to 1 million subscribers. But also we have to get to 1,000 subscribers first so that we can start to do streams on the Ungraded Truth channel. So if you're watching this and you're not subscribed to the channel, please hop over to the Ungraded Truth podcast, link in the description, and give that channel a sub. Now, gentlemen, we're going to talk about all things tonight. Probstein. We're going to talk about shady businesses. We're going to talk about PSA cases being hard to break into. But before we do that, let's give a little bit of thanks. Let's give a little bit of gratitude. It was Thanksgiving weekend this past Thursday. Did you guys have a great Thanksgiving? You know, what did you guys do? What's the tradition over in the houses that is the 99 house, you know, the automatic house? What kind of side dishes did you have? What'd you guys do for the holidays?
Dinner with the family. Oh, sorry. Yeah, simple. Dinner with the family. There was everything on the table. My mom always cooks up a big feast, and that's what we do. It's just been our tradition like so many other people. And we just get together and enjoy that time.
Yeah. We went out to eat for the first time ever. We usually make something and we're just like, nah, we're not doing it this time. And I bought 3 pies though. I have worked through 2.5 of those pies, so I still have half a pie left to go. But yeah, that's I don't know, apple pie and whatever and ice cream and stuff. That's my big thing for this time of year.
Parents for me. My dad has a rule that he won't leave the house on Thanksgiving, so my mom has hosted Thanksgiving literally my entire life, which works out fine for me.
That's solid.
It's a long drive for us to go back to my family, so we do it here.
And you, Swag?
I'll round it out. My family's in the Bay Area, which is where I am right now. As you guys can see, I'm in a little bit of a remote setup, so don't mind my fake background right here. But we always get together on Thanksgiving. Had a great early-ish dinner. cooked some turkey, did the typical dishes, and it was wonderful. It's always good to see friends and family and have good health and have a good time and drink some good wine. And now I get to hang out with some fine gentlemen and everyone in the chat. So I'm appreciative and thankful and grateful for being able to talk collectibles with all you guys here today. And I'm thankful to Huraton with the $5 Canadian super chat, which is basically negative US dollars.
I stole money from you.
I'm just kidding.
Paid him for the
Tales
super
from the Crypt number 40
You had to
versus
pay
number
duties on that.
44 based on cover looks, panel to vote. All right, Tales from the Crypt 40 versus 44. Let's kind of make it easy for the gentleman here so they can see
Yeah,
this.
let's see what that
Hold
is.
on.
Yeah, I feel like 40 and 44 aren't two that I think about all that often, so I'd have to like
I
normally
don't know
I'm
if you
thinking
guys can
like
hear me. Freeze? Am I frozen?
no,
No,
I can
we
hear
hear
you.
you. We
Yep,
hear
We
you.
can hear you. You are a little frozen though.
A little freeze never hurt no one.
Am I back?
Man.
Am I frozen? Can
You
you
never
guys
really
hear
laughed.
me?
We
Yeah,
can
you-
hear maybe he can't hear us. That could be the problem.
Oh, maybe he
test,
can't
test.
hear us. Can you hear us?
Oh no. The first
Technical issues.
technical
Wrap.
on the ungraded truth.
Uh-oh.
All right.
This is the new like.
It's this.
Oh man.
It's this Google search.
Swag.
This Google search did us in.
Yeah.
No, it was the Canadian super chat.
Oh my gosh.
It stole our Wi-Fi.
Tariffs wrecked the show.
Oh, actually, that reminds me. Hopefully, I have enough Wi-Fi.
Oh, he's joining again. But we can't hear new.
All right.
We can't. All right, now
There
we're
he
good.
is. New swag.
All right,
Yes.
Am I
great.
back? Am I back? My apologies. My apologies. A
You're
little
back.
bit of technical difficulties here.
Yeah,
But
maybe
I
people
did.
try
I
to
was
Google
trying
things.
to.
We
I
were
was trying to,
maybe
you
we
know-
were attacked because we're trying to talk about too much ungraded truth. So people trying to shut us down.
Oh, we were
Uh-oh.
cyber attacked.
Very, very
database.
true.
Neo, don't
Very,
say
very
that. That
true.
ties into something later. Don't say it. Oh no.
All right. Well, really quick, guys. Let's answer Hurutan's question here. We got Tales from the Crypt number 40. As you guys can see the cover, it's the guy that's diving right there with the clamshell at the bottom with the zombie. And then 44, which is the axe guillotine book.
For
What
me,
do you
it's
guys
40.
prefer?
I like
40
40
looks
more.
cooler.
I like
Oh,
the color.
40?
I like the color scheme and everything of 40 a lot
Yeah, the
more.
color pops better on 40.
Damn, I don't.
All
I
right.
mean, shoot, I don't know. Yeah, 40 does kind of look better, but I don't know. It's hard for me. I'm a tie. I'm toss up.
Well, 40 it is. All right. I'm a little bit stuck on my settings here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we
We
can. Hear you.
can.
Yeah, you keep
Oh,
going
no.
a little
Okay.
robo-y.
All right. All right. Well, on with the show.
No
Let's
more-
get
no
into
more
it.
pulling
Let's
up
not
extra
bury the
screens.
lead. Yeah. No more extra screens for me. I'm not going to bury the lead anymore. We're going to jump into our first topic, which was, of course, the Rick Probstein story. Founder of the auction house SNYPE ran into a bit of a shady, sticky, strange situation where their auction house actually ended up getting hacked, and they were had a big data breach where a lot of accounts were leaked out there publicly for the bidders of the auction on SNYPE. And turns out that some of the usernames in that data breach were allegedly going to be our key word here, being tracked to Probstein himself, who is, of course, the founder of the auction house. I'm going to kick it over to Rob here, and I'm going to let you unpack this story a little bit in more detail, because I know that you've been on top of this one. But why don't you give everyone in the audience here a little bit of a recap of what happened, and then maybe more importantly, talk about maybe the bigger fallout that the community had with this one.
So for those that don't know who Rick Probstein is, was the biggest eBay consigner in the card category specifically. He did sell comics on occasion, but basically one of the biggest eBay consigners on the platform. He'd announced about a year ago that he was going to build his own platform, go out on his own, and it launched. I think it will be 3 weeks ago now, tomorrow, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And the website essentially fell apart on launch night. Everything broke, everything caught on fire. None of the bids worked. People were double charged. Things ended early. Things ended late. It was basically a disaster on all proportions. And then the next day, on the Elite forums, which is a Pokemon community, someone had posted that you could say hacked, or you could say maybe the security of the website wasn't the best to begin with and the door was just left wide open. It's kind of like, are you robbed if you just leave your back door wide open and someone just walks in and takes all your stuff? That
still technically yes, but
yeah, technically yes, but like, you know, if you say welcome in as part of it, that next day that surfaced that there was potentially this has not been acknowledged yet by Probstein formally, though he did, according to Catch 'em All Collectables, another Pokemon YouTuber, had a phone conversation with, in his video, confirmed that it did, but there hasn't been anything public from SNYPE itself. That there was a data breach, and as part of that, as Swags mentioned, there was people were able to pull bid histories down, and there was some stuff in there that does not look so great. And then to add on to that, within a week, he moved all of his items back to eBay. So he is now back selling on eBay, and then there's I forget what it is, like 7,000 items back in his eBay store and running an auction. And a lot of people are still left with, wait, what the hell's actually going on right now?
Got it.
That's
And
a great
it's
rundown.
to me, like, one of the crazy things is that, like, they're just like, all right, SNYPE is done. You know, like, I mean, I get it, but it's like something that was being built for that long, and it's just all of a sudden, like, I mean, how much money must have gone into that development and everything, and then to just pull it down instantly, like that's crazy. That whole platform is now just gone. Yeah,
I mean, I think it kind of goes to show you, one, how bad it must have been, like in terms of working condition, like how operable or inoperable the site was leading up to it. I never spent any time on it. I never registered for an account or anything. Like, I pulled the website up to look at it for like to talk about it like briefly in a video. That was about it. But a lot of people were saying, even leading up to the auctions ending, like search didn't work correctly. There was like a lot of other things that were like kind of janky on it. And then, just within a week, just completely shuts the site down and moves the stuff back to eBay. The moving stuff back to eBay to sell it super fast doesn't surprise me as much as shutting the site down, because he's a consignor, and most of what he sells, which is sports cards, can be kind of timely. So there's probably certain windows that people wanted to hit with cards. So you need to get those back to market fast, or your consignors. I can imagine you had $50,000 worth of cards with him, and they're just kind of in limbo. So he needed to get those to market as quickly as possible to probably get those off his books.
I mean, the other thing that, because I know some people have been talking about this, like if eBay would take him back or not, or that kind of thing. And I mean, everybody just assumes that because he's a big consignor that eBay would take him back. But I mean, they've dropped big consignors before if they feel like that there's a risk to like how people view their business. You know, like, I mean, I can't remember what the name of the company was, but like, what was who was it that the other card? Yeah, PwC that got dropped. Yeah, like they got dropped. But then, like, there are other things. Like, there's I remember there was a clothing consignor that I used to watch, like his YouTube channel, where he would teach people about eBay and all that kind of thing. And he was a big consignor, and he sold like one pair of sneakers that they decided was like not appropriate to sell, like that they could have been faked or something, and they pulled everything from him. He's not allowed to sell on there. His wife's not allowed to sell on there. Like, I mean, like, they don't screw around. Like, I mean, I get it. Like, he's a big guy, a lot of money, but maybe they're letting this first thing go, and they could be evaluating it. Like, you don't know for sure if they're going to continue to allow him if they feel like something wasn't really straight.
I don't think they would. I think if they felt that something wasn't straight, they wouldn't have let him back on to begin with, because they already took the PR hit for taking him back. So why would you?
But I mean, like, but what does it mean really to, like, if I just like pulled my listings, it's not like I don't still have an account.
Well,
I mean,
so he had a sweetheart deal in regards to selling fees, and those ended when he left the platform, like, air quote, left the platform. Like, his existing, the way that I understand it is his existing deal was up, and he didn't renegotiate a new one. So a new one was probably renegotiated for him to come back, because he doesn't pay the same selling fees we do. You know, we pay whatever it is, 13.5% or something like that. he pays significantly less because of the volume that he moves, and that's all negotiated. So like that current contract essentially ended when he went to SNYPE. So if he just came back on his own, like you said,
it's possible he didn't have the same
it,
deal like coming back. He may, if he had to sell stuff, maybe he took the hit on like normal person fees.
I am sure that he didn't get as good of a deal coming back because eBay would have been in the full position of power there. Like if you want to come back, you're playing by our set. Like we have the power here in regards to setting new terms and conditions for him, like from a percentage standpoint.
Just ask the question though that I feel like needs to just sort of be asked in order to kind of really unpack this. And this is not actually what I think, but why would eBay care what happened on SNYPE? Why wouldn't they bring him back? Like why would it be something that they're concerned with?
So to me, it would be that it's more the allegedly stuff, that if it looks like there was some shady bidding going on, because that's what got PWCC banned, then maybe that they would say like, okay, now that we start maybe looking into their history more, because I mean, a lot of people have some general thoughts on Probstein's auctions out there. And so, you know, like it makes people start to dig in a little deeper. Like for me, like, I know, like whenever I was looking for something, I would never bid on anything that was being sold by Probstein, because it was just like, somehow it always went for 20% more than market, you know? And I'm just like, I'm not even going to bother watching this.
Well, let's kind of push on that and double click that file a little further, because I think what's interesting about this story is that, you know, shout out to the people over at Collect Media. I think they're a great platform. They do some great reporting, but in this particular post, for instance, you know, they made an announcement that SNYPE is going down. Probstein has confirmed that they're going back to eBay, and they kind of hand waved away the bigger issue, which was the alleged stuff. And granted, you know, just full disclosure, we're going into tinfoil hat territory here, guys. This is all allegedly.
Take us there, Swag.
We're going there. It's interesting because like the media had sort of reported this as like, oh, the story is the auction house had a couple issues, and then now he's just going to go back to eBay and close the doors. But the bigger thing was, from the data breach, there were all these, you know, accounts that people could actually see, and the accounts were connected to emails that people allegedly think belong to Probstein. And it kind of goes back to the conversation we had the other week about shill bidding, and it kind of just begs all these sort of questions. And if you go into, like, you know, any video that's been made about it, or any article that's been written about it, or any conversation, you could see all the commenters are like, they don't really care about the story that's being reported. They're caring about, you know, this other story that has been unearthed behind it, and that is kind of the allegations and the shady business that is potentially going on in the story. And I guess, like, what do you guys think has been like the conversation around that, and what do you guys make of some of these allegations?
So for what it's worth, Ravel, who runs Collect, did tweet out after the same day that that story was posted that they essentially saying that Collect did ask questions around that stuff, and that basically Probstein didn't answer any of them. So why they didn't include that in the article, I don't know, but they did clarify that they did ask more questions. But Ravel got himself in some trouble tweeting a semi-defense of the whole Probstein coverage as well. So you could kind of take his stuff a little bit of both ways, just to add some further context to that.
What do you think, Nia?
Which
about
which
the shilling allegations? Like, do you think it is someone just trying to make him look bad by photoshopping a bunch of stuff, or do you think, like, you know, is it fine for us to share what we think might be going on? What do you think?
I think we don't. I mean, I think we can assume, but I don't think we actually. It's the difference between what it looks like versus what. It's all coming from a single source. So I think some folks are trying to be careful about, is there anything else to corroborate this beyond a single poster on a forum, as bad as it looks? And, you know, it plays into what everyone already thought anyway.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's always dangerous too, though, because like people have preconceived, you know, notions about how things are operating.
Right, and I'm not, listen.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I buy into that at all. Like, I am right with pretty much everybody else in regards to what we all think is going on, but what we think versus what we know, like factually, are two completely different things.
Yeah.
And
To me, like what it really does is it's just like because what was that? Was it 4 weeks ago? Maybe was it 2 shows ago that we were talking about the defensive bidding.
Defensive bidding.
Yeah.
It's just like it's more things where people just are. This is what I've been seeing in terms of a lot of the other talking heads and everything that are out there. It's people just asking the question of what are the real prices, that are out there. And obviously, like we've said it before, it's like, it's like, do you really want to know, or like, does it even matter? Like I get it. Like we get mad about it because you feel like you're getting ripped off, like you're paying more than you should for something. But I don't think we're ever going to get an answer that, is going to make people happy. We're not going to get that, like, not even smoking gun, just like it would need to be more than that. We're never going to get some real clear, like written up email where it's like, I was doing this every day, bidding up this, it's like, it's just not going to happen. It's like, we can probably guess that there's some percentage of bids out there that are they're going to be garbage. And it's part of the price you pay when you're in a collectibles industry that is not really regulated. I mean, and the only way that would change is if we got, like, it's not going to be at a state level, like federal level regulation. And that's not going to happen. Like, it's just not going to happen. So we have to be kind of, it's unfortunate. It's like we get to, talk about it and it's interesting, but I just don't see that. I don't think we're going to get the answer we want to get.
No.
I think
like
it's
go ahead, Spike.
Go ahead, Rob. No, go.
I was going to say, like, I did a live the night that it happened that he went back to eBay, and people are like, he has to make a statement. Probstein has to come out and say something. And I was just like, one, no lawyer in their right mind is going to allow him to speak in front of a microphone, like, for God knows how long. And two, at this point, I don't know if he was live right here with us now telling his whole story. I don't know what he could possibly say that 95% of people would be like, I don't believe any of that. I'm believing the narrative that's out there. Whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, I don't know. But like, I legitimately have no idea what he could say that people would be like, oh man, you know what? I'm on Team Probstein now. Like, there's nothing that could come out of his mouth that would convince people change their mind on what the narrative already is.
That's a great point. It's not like the website's available for anyone to actually go into the back end and see what the code shows now. He pulled it down, right? And anything that he does say, I don't think many people are going to believe. The question then is, does anyone care? Like kind of like what you guys are saying, like, even if everyone assumes the allegations are true, I mean, listen, he's still going to sell thousands of things on eBay and people are still going to buy it all up. Does anyone care?
Well, one of the other points that I was talking about as well is how many people even know. Like, most people, I would probably say 90% of people buying on eBay don't pay attention to the seller outside of, oh yeah, they have good reviews. Okay, cool.
Well, yeah, and I can't remember if it was you that was talking about that or if it was another like stream I was watching, but it was somebody made a comment, and it's very similar to the whole Swapgate thing. Like, I remember people talking about that with comics, is that it's like, what percentage of people actually know about this stuff? And because the reality is, it's a pretty small percent that are like on YouTube or like heavily on Instagram or whatever, hearing about these things. And we're in these bubbles. So for us, it seems like it's like this huge thing that everybody's talking about. But the reality is, yeah, you're right. It's probably 90% of people out there just have no idea and don't care. And it's not going to affect what they're doing. Same thing with the defensive bidding stuff. Like, most people probably don't have any real, knowledge of those types of allegations and those talking points and everything that are out there.
Yeah, we are a bubble inside of a bubble inside of a bubble. Like to your point, how many people even know what Bananagate is that are hardcore comic collectors? If you went and walked around New York Comic Con and surveyed people, most people probably wouldn't even know what Bananagate was or what Swapgate was. If I walk around a card show, most people probably don't know who Probstein even is. They probably bought and sold. They probably bought from him before, but they don't. I mean, even myself personally, there's plenty of times I look at an eBay listing and I don't always look at the seller that close. I just glance and they're just like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. They have a lot of, like, their feedback is mostly positive, and it's not coming from China. I'm going to go ahead and bid on this,
That's definitely one of the big issues. I agree with everything you guys have been saying. It's funny how the community has been calling for him to like make a statement on this stuff. But the reality is, if I were him, I would not say anything, because the more quiet you are, the more weeks go by, the more people kind of move on and forget. And just to kind of reiterate what you guys are saying, like the problem with collectibles in general is, yes, there's no regulating body here. There's no government agency that's going to get involved in this stuff. And at the end of the day, you need to, if you're going to be in this space and you're going to be putting up money for big items, or you're going to be, buying expensive collectibles, or you need to even sell expensive collectibles, there's really no way around not using the grading companies or the auction houses or the big players. And so as much as you can put up like a this is wrong, I'm not going to ever buy from Probstein again sort of it's like standpoint, eventually there's going to be a card that rolls around that you want that gets sold on his platform, and you're going to be like, well, whatever, like I'll just buy that card because that's the thing that I want. And so it's like, I'm not saying like people shouldn't be upset, but the tough part is that there's no right answers here. There's no easy answers to like how you get around this, or how you protest something like this, or how you get justice in this. And the truth is, I don't know if justice is ever really going to be coming in a lot of the instances within collectibles. And I don't know, that's just something that I think is everyone has to understand when they opt into this space.
If I may, before I move on, right along the lines of what you just said, before we move on, right along the lines where you said, I don't know if justice is ever coming. Someone in the chat said, the Money Master Hub, what's going on? Mastery Hub. He says, what type of regulation could you realistically put into place to stop shill bidding? And not even the talk of regulation. I just think, and this is not something people like hearing, and I got myself in trouble in the last episode, like thinking out loud, but I'm going to continue to do so. I don't think anything stops shilling. It's impossible to stop shilling. If someone can create an account to push up the price of something, who's going to know who's creating the account? Again, I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying it's ethical. I don't take part in it. I've never even auctioned anything at a major auction house, like 3 auctions on eBay in my lifetime on eBay. And like I said to a commenter in the comment section a few weeks ago, that auction went for like 30% of what I thought it would go for, and I happily shipped it out. I certainly didn't shill it. I'm just being realistic about the fact that I think every auction house, every auction platform is susceptible to, and people are taking part in shilling. And it's kind of like what Ryan said, like, if you get it for the price you want, I guess that's all that matters. And I don't fully, I'm not fully there with that statement, but I'm saying that you have to take some of that statement in and be like, you just have to be really responsible about how far you're willing to go, knowing that there is a possibility that this thing is being shilled on you, because you're just not going to be able to stop it. I can't think of a way to. And real quick, Stony Maloney, thank you so much, says this podcast has become a never miss for me. So that's amazing. But yeah, Swag, I just agree with you. Like, I don't think justice is coming. I think it's the Wild Wild West. I don't think any bodies that could, put into effect some regulation even care that this is happening. Maybe it's not affecting the right people for certain agencies to get involved, but it is the environment that we're in. And at least we're aware of it, especially in the last 4 weeks. We're way more aware of it than we ever were. And apparently shilling is everywhere.
I mean, to me, like, I never say that things need to be solved 100%, like, cause that's just like, it's too difficult to get there. But it's what can you do to make it just like the barrier to entry, to make it a little more difficult to do things. And, people are talking about in the comments, it's like, it's openness or clarity on who's bidding on what, cause, eventually, like if you make it more of a hassle where you've got to create 50 different accounts versus just 1 or 2 other accounts, or 100 different accounts, like, just makes it more difficult. And so, yeah, you're probably never going to get to the place where it's perfect. But if you had something that was instituted where it required kind of an openness on who's bidding, but I mean, that's the other thing. It's like, then, like, if I knew like my information was going to be freely out there about like what I was buying, would I want that either as the buyer? Like, is that fair to like tell everybody what I own? Like, so it's like, how do you really approach that?
I think you make a good point in something I was going to emphasize as well, which is sometimes the only thing that you can do is just add a couple checks and balances, and also add, hold some of the feet to the fire, which is having conversations like this, just having an uproar, and just kind of saying, having people in the community say that this is not okay. Like now, maybe you'll never be able to actually institute any policies or laws or rules to actually enforce it. But I think sometimes just feeling the heat makes people go, okay, I can't just blindly chill, or I can't just so easily get away with this. I got to be a little bit careful. And I think just a little bit of that social pressure probably reduces the amount that happens out there. Now, there's still going to be a lot of it, but like imagine if nobody cared. Like if there was never uproar or conversations about this, then people are going to always go to the path of least resistance. And if you know that you can get away with shill bidding and you're not going to get accused of anything, then you'll just do it. But now if there is that social pressure, if there is at least some checks and balances, like Ryan said, if it's at least like somewhat hard, like I can't just bid on an item or have my wife bid on an item, or some family member bid on an item, there's those policies in play. Obviously, you can never stop the fifth degree of separation person who bids on your own item, but at least getting the easy ones out of the way and having those checks and balances set up, I think does a lot probably in the long run.
100%. And before the next topic, sorry, I already said this, but before the next topic, blank was definitely blanking. Okay, carrying
on. Well, shout out to MSG Comics for the $2 for Swags to upgrade his internet. I appreciate that. That will definitely go to giving Spectrum a lot of shame. And I will never be able to institute policies to make my internet better. But if I yell at them, they might eventually do it. Speaking of yelling at people, let's go on now to our next shady business topic, which is, of course, shady sellers on eBay. We have a little bit of a presentation to go over, and I'm going to kick this over to Manu right now. Why don't you kind of take us through what we see here, which was, of course, the sale of an FF48 CGC 98. Maybe Ryan, you can jump in this story as well. But let's kind of talk about this and talk to the people in the chat about what's kind of going on in the eBay world and why you got to be careful with some of the fake slabs that are being sold out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that I definitely want to create more awareness about. And Ryan did do a fantastic video about this. We're not going to spend too much time on this FF48, but I'm going to cover a couple of things and we're going to connect it to a few other things, right? So real quick, just to get to what this is about for anyone that isn't aware yet. This FF48 sold on eBay a few weeks ago. Regardless, the finer points don't matter there. A few weeks ago for this price that you see here, $35,000, which I believe is kind of low for the book. I think I don't know the price history, but I believe it was. Regardless,
yeah, it's about 7 to 10 low.
Okay. Thank you for that. I didn't know. And so the individual that purchased this book received the book. Once receiving the book, they realized something was off. They noticed that the top of the case had been tampered with. There were some remnants of glue. It was kind of open. Once they realized that, being such an expensive book, they grew concerned. They started actually going back to the listing and comparing pictures. The reason these screenshots are here are to illustrate something very simple, and then we'll move on to the next one. But first, pay attention to the name of this eBay account. That is a well-known name in some circles, not just eBay. But we'll get back to that. But remember that name, pay attention to the name. Also, the red carpet is infamous. And when Derek made a comment about it on Ryan's video, he didn't actually know what he was commenting on at the time, but I will tie into why the red carpet is previously infamous. In the comic book space, people don't know that. In the Marvel card space, people know that very well. They happen to communicate more in sort of private corridors. I don't know if that's the word, but like Facebook groups and Discord. So publicly, not too many people are aware, but I'll shed some light. So anyway, in this listing, this individual that runs this account, or this individual whose account this is that sold this book, used both the heritage pictures. Presumably, again, this individual maintains their innocence, and we'll talk more about that. These aren't allegations, these are observations. But if one were to assume, you would assume that that heritage picture is probably used to lend some legitimacy to this listing. And then you obviously see pictures of the book in more of a, private residence, if you will, showing that I did buy this book, or this book was once sold on heritage and now I have it. So anyway, no one knows to look for what I'm going to show you in a moment when they're bidding on this, because they don't have a reason to. But like I said, individual received the book, noticed something was off about it. Swag, could you please take us to the next slide?
Sure. And I have close-ups that we can show as well. So
perfect. Thank you. And so one thing that the individual that received the book noticed is that the label was off. The spacing was off. The sort of the ink was off. A lot of things were wrong with the label. So it's not a reprint, but it's a reproduction. And another way to confirm that it's not a reprint is you can see here the original label on the bottom says first appearance spelled correctly. The label on the book that was shipped to the buyer says first appearance. And it was James, MJ Comics, he's with us in the chat, that actually noticed this while we were discussing this. And that's hilarious. So this person who, committed this fraud, I'm not saying that it's the person that runs the eBay account, but you guys connect some dots. Like I said, he maintains his innocence. But whoever reproduced this label didn't do that good of a job. I guess it's good that he was kind of careless because we need to be looking for these things. Regardless, so now we know that the slab had been tampered with, opened up, and the label has been replaced with a reproduction. And then the question was like, but so the book has to be different too, right? And so if you take a look at this other picture here, it's actually the books look similar at even an extended glance, but once you start comparing where the art falls around the edges, it's kind of some dead giveaways. And the one on the left is the heritage picture. The one on the right is the one that was delivered to the gentleman that purchased the book. And you see that window on the building, and you can see where the window cuts off. Clearly, there's like 70% less of the window on the one that was delivered. So it's identifiable as a different book. So the reason that I am articulating and showing this again, Ryan has made a video. I've talked about it on other channels, including MJ's channel, MJ Comics, is because I personally don't believe this is the last time we're going to see this. And we need to be super aware. We need to be paying attention. And listen, it's unfortunate for the account, but we have to be watching this eBay account, because even if this individual says that they got the book this way, they play the victim, whatever it is, this isn't the only occurrence like this. And when I was previously talking about this, many people said, jokingly, of course, they said, man, this is one time where it's good that I'm poor, or, those kinds of jokes, because making the assumption that this person's only going to scam things that are tens of thousands of dollars. So anyone trading in like regular, less expensive stuff, they may not find themselves a victim to this. But in fact, on this account, items less than $1,000, clearly fraudulent, and we're going to show evidence in just a moment. So I think that puts a bow on this for a moment. Swag, yes?
I don't know if Ryan wanted to just kind of chime in on
please,
any extra details, because I know the person who reached out to you is the one that bought the book, but maybe you can kind of weigh in on this particular sale.
Yeah, no, I mean, one of the people that watches the channel reached out to me, and they said, they're like, hey, I have something interesting you might want to hear about. And so I asked for pictures. He sent me a bunch of pictures for this. And but yeah, that was the interesting thing with this, because I mean, like Manu was saying, if you're swapping out a book, you want it to be as close in appearance as possible. And like you said, like, it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Like, because like the first thing you typically would check is like the corner box, and the corner box is like real close. The actual wrap is real close. And so I bet, that whoever did this, like, ended up like looking through quite a few copies, because it also not only that, it has to be close enough on the grade. It's like, you can't something that's got creases or whatever. So it's going to be a high grade book, whether maybe it's restored though, or maybe it's a green label or something like that. But even if it was like a 9.4 or 9.2 and you sell it for a 9.8 price, that's still tens of thousands of dollars. So you're still going to get a big benefit from swapping in like a 9.2 or a 9.4 universal, or that label for a 9.8 into a 9.2 or 9.4. So, I mean, it sucks seeing this stuff, because you feel like you shouldn't have to be this cautious like all the time. It's like, it's tiring, but yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, if something doesn't feel right, take that extra little step and look a little closer. There were a number of things on the label that once you start looking at it close, you see spacing issues and all this stuff but just at a glance, or even at like probably like 30 seconds, you're not going to catch that. Now, the thing, somebody commented on this in the chat, and I thought this was really interesting too, that I didn't understand why you would even put the heritage listing in there. And like, I get that it's like what you were saying, Manu, is like, try to say like, hey, look, this was the heritage one, now I have it. But it gave the evidence of the fraud in the listing. It made it the easiest thing to check, instead of having to think, oh, I got to go look up this cert number, try to find it on Heritage or on Go Collect or whatever, so I can find a picture to compare to. It made it much quicker to find that problem.
This is going to tie into a couple of things that, I have some previous knowledge of this individual and some of the things this individual has been a part of. And what I'll say is that, this person's brazen. Like, this individual thinks they can't get caught, and they do really ridiculous things. I'm going to tell you about something in a moment that, this question about why include the heritage listing pales in comparison to the questions you're going to have after I tell you what's happened in the card space. And but yeah, so we got to keep an eye out for more books, and he is able to privately transact as well. And I told some people in the community that I did speak to Matt Nelson about this. Matt Nelson is aware, but all we can do at the moment is be paying attention, right? And we had a lengthy conversation, but we'll keep that under wraps for now. But at the moment, we just need to be very cautious. And I want to move on to this other item that is from the same eBay account, which now the eBay name of this account, same account, has been changed. It is now called, as you see here, Precious Paper Gems. Innocent people, I shouldn't say that. People have reasons to change names, and some of those reasons might be because, maybe they're doing something wrong. I don't know. Or maybe the name was just getting dragged and they wanted to change it. Again, there are a lot of coincidences in relation to this account and with this individual, but you guys got to make your own decisions. I'm making no allegations whatsoever. The guy maintains his innocence. Anyway, here you see a couple of things. One, we're pointing out that the eBay page name has been changed. Second, there's a feedback here from a month ago, same account, not an expensive item. Well, not $35,000, still pricey. It says PSA holders were fake. Make sure your higher end graded cards are going through eBay authentication regardless. So I wanted to go find this listing. And since it was only a month ago, I was able to find it. This is that listing. So these are 2 Star Wars cards, PSA 10s, and the auction ended for $828. Now, if you take a look at, if you compare the fronts of these cards, or you compare this one, this is the first card in the listing. On the left, you have the PSA scan. The one on the black background is the PSA scan. The one on the gray background is the picture from the listing. The cert number is the same. These cards are not the same. If you focus in on these corners, you can very clearly see that the card that was sold is not the PSA 10 that PSA graded. Same account, not a CGC book. This is a PSA card. And if you look at the finer points of that label as well, you may be, actually, it's quite easy to identify the differences. Look at the spacing above 1977 on both cards. So and look at how thick the red border is. You can see differences in the thickness of the border. So again, we have reproduction labels. Oh, and I forgot to mention, from that FF48, that individual still has the regular 9.8 label. Who knows what he intends to do with that? And that 9.8 that came out of that encapsulation presumably is going to get regraded, but he still has a 9.8 label. In any case, same thing we see here. The card has been swapped with the lower grade card. The label's a reproduction label. Not only that, I don't even believe this is an authentic PSA slab. The PSA scan on the lower left, is it the lower left or lower right? There is the engraving or the embossed PSA logo, which I cannot identify on the card sold. So fake slab, fake label, and swapped out card. Again, same account. Once, a coincidence. Multiple times, I don't know. And even if you are being taken advantage of over and over again as the seller, then we still should not be doing business with this account, because he's taking no accountability for selling fake stuff or fraudulent stuff. Why should we trust this account at all anyway? Now, this is the only example. Oh, and I think I also sent Swag pictures of the back of the card, but it's showing you the same thing. It's very easy to identify that the cards are not the same. And then this picture here, this is an entirely different listing. Look at that lower corner of that slab. Clearly that slab was opened. Clearly that slab was pried open and put back together. You have to be checking for these things. Right above this listing of those 2 Star Wars cards, there's another one with 2 Star Wars cards, PSA 10s, same deal. And that one went for a little less than $800. So very important to recognize that the comic book thing might continue to happen. It's happened on this account. Now the account name is changed. And if you looked at the history of this account, there are other fraudulent activities going on. A moment ago, I said that the red carpet had become notorious. The reason I say that is because the individual who is that name associated with the account originally before it was changed, it is a very well-known name in certain communities. And that community is the original art community, primarily Marvel cards, as well as the Marvel card community itself. And a number of months ago, I'll tell you how this transpired, and I'll tell you what took place after that. It's pretty interesting. A friend of ours was sent, someone pulled a very big card out of a brand new product. It was a one-of-one Spider-Man card, roughly a $30,000 to $50,000 card. And I'm not pulling that number out of my butt. That's what people are paying for these things. They sell on Golden for like $50K. In any case, someone pulls this card and shares it with a friend of mine who's, a public figure and someone well respected in the card community. I'm not saying his name because I don't want his name any more associated with this than it already has been. People know who I'm talking about. He's a good guy. And so someone sent him the picture of a card they pulled, and my friend shared it on his Instagram story. Like, oh my gosh, the card's been pulled, the search is over. And then another individual that follows my friend saw that picture and said, what the heck? I just bought this card for X amount of dollars whenever ago. And the person that he bought that one-of-one from months ago or whenever ago was from the individual that operates this eBay account, but privately through other channels. So you're faking one-of-ones, knowing that someone eventually is going to pull a one-of-one? That's a little more ridiculous to me than the heritage picture being, also as part of the listing. Like, that's very bold and absurd to do. Like, it's almost like a ticking time bomb. Eventually, someone's going to pull the one-of-one. So once this was sort of started being discussed in Marvel Card Facebook groups and in Discord channels, other people that he had sold one-of-ones to, which there were like 5 or 6 other ones around the same period of time, they were like, yo, my card looks crazy. Oh, the top layer's peeling off. They started examining the pictures that he was sending when he was selling these cards. The pictures are photoshopped. Imperfections are clearly blurred out and poorly blurred out. And then when you look at the card in hand, you're like, oh shit, this wasn't even in the picture sent to me. Some people didn't pay as much attention until they had reason to. So this guy was getting away with it. Now, what does he do? He refunded everyone that became aware. I don't know who hasn't become aware, but the people that became aware that they bought fake one-of-ones, he refunded them. And again, maintains his innocence, says he bought everything from a vendor at a card shop, at a card show somewhere in California, refuses to name the vendor, of course, right? And just maintains his innocence, says he was at a show and he saw all these new one-of-ones and he couldn't believe it and he bought them all and he's been selling them all. Man, I don't know if I can buy that. And if that's the case, then air out the vendor. Blast the vendor. Tell us who it is that these cards came from. Why are you protecting a guy that screwed you? And then other people say, well, he's paying everyone back. You wouldn't have to pay anyone back if you weren't selling fake cards to begin with. Paying someone back isn't making it right. That's just because you got caught. If you didn't get caught, you wouldn't be paying anyone back.
Yeah, the refund approach always really bugs me because, like, I get the same thing when I buy raw books on like live sales or on eBay or whatever, and like you have somebody describe something and then you buy that item and you get it and you look at it and you're like, oh, it's actually missing, 2 wraps or it's got color touch or whatever. And, they'll always refund you, but it's like, but I had to find that, it's like, if I hadn't found that, then I get screwed like whatever, 2 years or 5 years or whatever down the road, if I decide I want to sell it. And then, you go and check because maybe you didn't check right away because you trusted who that was. And you're like, oh crap, it's missing pages or whatever else. And now I got to eat that loss. And so it's like, it really, the whole idea that it's like, oh, they refund it, so they're okay, just always rubs me the wrong way because I feel like I always am like doing the work of the person that's supposed to be checking that stuff ahead of time. So yeah, even if you got scammed as the original, like the person who got scammed from that original seller, like you got to be checking your stuff before you sell it. Like that's your responsibility. Once you're selling it, you got to check it. And I feel like there's a lot of vendors out there that don't take that mindset. They just like, they get it and they pass it along quick, as quick as they can. And in comics, like, I don't know about with cards, but with comics, you've got to flip through books, you never know. Like these things have been out there for 40, 50, 60, 80 years, and they've passed through tons of hands and anything can happen. And so if you're not checking your stuff, you're a crappy seller.
Agreed. And, some of the other things here, there's a reason that this is also, it's not just some random guy, there's plenty of accounts on eBay that every now and then a scam pops up, so on and so forth. And we can't possibly find them all or discuss them all. But one of the things here that doesn't sit well with me or really troubles me is that in certain circles, this individual is sort of a high profile guy. and he's got relationships with significant collectors, significant companies. He's got some professional relationships with companies that we're all aware of. He's done content with companies, videos. He's done appearances on Pawn Stars, so on and so forth. Again, I don't know the guy could be innocent. I have to say it. The guy could be innocent, but we need to be careful. If you're getting taken advantage of left and right and then passing that misfortune on, well, you have to take some accountability there. But it's important for me to share with you guys that if you ask around in the circles that I mentioned, they're going to know who this individual is in case you want to know, what to be cautious about, because I don't feel comfortable naming him. And since he maintains his innocence, it's only fair to, he gets to do that, right? It's not like we have a smoking gun. We just have a bunch of observations and a reason to practice caution. And the other thing is the individuals, the other high profile individuals and entities that he does business with, they're not going to say anything about this. There's the idea of the money is flowing. This guy is not some guy that's only scamming people. He's got millions of dollars worth of really amazing stuff. And some people just want to maintain the relationship with him because they want to have access to that stuff. Some people want to have access to his money. He still buys expensive things and sells expensive things. They want to sell him things. So where the money's flowing, they probably won't say anything. And people that are going to look, pretty silly for their relationship with him, they're going to try to quietly part ways, which many people have distanced themselves already. They haven't publicly said squat. They know everything that's going on, but they just decided to quietly go away because it's better for their business not to get involved in this, but just to never get involved with that guy again. So there's some of that happening as well. And the fact that it's not just isolated to things that are $30,000 and $40,000 means we all have to be careful. And there are some other things that I wanted to share with you guys, but I'm not ready to, and it's not right to do it yet. But this person that may be responsible for this is partnering up with some pretty influential people right now. And they're going to be live streams that they're going to be selling on. There's whatnot streams they're going to be selling on. And they're doing a whole lot of lying. And, I do have some clips and stuff from a recent one. I can't share it at the moment because the other individual that's involved, I don't think he has a clue, and I think he's being taken advantage of. And I want to reach out to him privately first, offer him some support, let him know that there's no one in his corner that he can trust, but I might introduce him to some honest people. And once I speak to him, then maybe I'll share some of that other stuff. But at the moment, if I share it, it's just really embarrassing for him. And I don't want to do that because I don't think he's done anything wrong. But in any case, Swag, thank you for letting me talk about this. I think that's enough information at the moment for people to, follow the breadcrumbs and make whatever decisions are right for them.
Yeah, well, definitely. Well, thanks for that story, Manu. And also thanks to Eric Chang for the $5 super chat, who says, information is power. So I'm here for all the latest on shilling, scams, and general bad behavior. Laughing out loud. That's what you got to do. You got to laugh in these situations because sometimes it feels like there's nothing you can do. But Rob, I mean, hearing the story,
Robot Swag.
I know.
I'll make one quick comment on something
out?
why Swag's internet fixes itself. Regarding the eBay authenticity guarantee on the card portion of that section, with him selling 2 cards together, it bypasses eBay AG. If you sell
really? I didn't know that.
of cards, they do not go through eBay authenticity guarantee. It's only single individual cards go through eBay AG. So the second you sell 2 cards together, it bypasses eBay AG.
Holy cow, that's so interesting. So the guy that left the feedback saying that they didn't pass authentication, did he maybe make that up just so people would pay attention? Because obviously we can see that the cards were nonsense. But why does his feedback then say that these were deemed inauthentic? Oh no, maybe he didn't. No, actually, his feedback
that's
said.
not what the feedback said. He said, make sure they go through eBay AG.
Yeah. You're right. He found out they were inauthentic a different way, and then he said, make sure they go through. That's great. I actually knew that, and I forgot that. You're right. If it's a lot, it does not go through authentication. Damn, we got a lot to look out for, guys.
That's something I was wondering about too, though. Is that at some point does that become the future for comics as well, above a certain price point? That there's going to be something where it, gets passed to CGC or PSA or whoever gets that contract, to do the authentication on them. Because I mean, I imagine they should have caught it. Like if that did exist, they should have caught that FF48, just because the label alone would have, like, I feel like in person you would have caught that.
Cracked at the top.
Marvelous Packs, is that you? Is that MPAX? Just DM me. You know who you don't have to DM me. You know who it is. Ask any one of your friends. You know exactly who it is. But if that's MPAX, what up?
Yeah, a lot of people gripe about eBay AG on graded cards, on why it exists and the waste of time. Why are you double checking my graded card? And this is exactly the reason why it's important. Like, I get that it's annoying that it takes you an extra week or so to get your card or whatever, but all it takes is once to save your ass, and it's worth, I mean, you're not even paying for it as of right now. It's free, but there are ways to bypass it. And the listing will say, like, if you're bidding on the listing, it will say on it, like, this item is going to go through eBay authenticity guarantee. So if you don't see that on there, it could be because of the lot thing. There's weird stuff with overseas things that it doesn't go through eBay AG. And there's a few other loopholes, but the biggest one is listing multiple cards in the listing. There was, when the program first started, you were seeing people they would sell like a lot of 20 cards, and they'd be raw, and there'd be like one card in there that was super valuable, and you'd just be able to see like part of it in like cards thrown out on a table, like they were just selling some cheap lot. And
Classic
it would
move.
just play into, oh, look, that looks like a corner of a 52 mantle, and it wouldn't go through eBay AG. So of course it would be like a reprint or a fake or something like that. Same thing. If you ever see someone selling like a high-end graded card and it comes packaged with like some worthless second card, that should be an immediate red flag.
That's good to know. Yeah. Cause I did not know that beforehand, that was a way to buy that bypass that. So yeah, I feel like that is a very valuable piece of information.
Only applies to singles only. So yeah, at least as of right now, that could always change, but
yeah, that's definitely a very good tip. I mean, just overall though, Rob, just going back to you and the bigger scandal, which was like this presumed card swap that's maybe going on with these Star Wars cards and the FF48 swap. What is an individual to do here? Do we have a card swapping scandal once again going on?
Well, do we know that those cards were swapped or just fake slabs? Because those look more like fake slabs than swapped cards, in my opinion.
Wait,
without really.
But the whole thing. Well, that's interesting. I mean, is that semantics though? Because the label is a reproduction of the original label. So the cert number is the cert number that when you use it in the PSA app, it pulls up the original card with the original scan. So everything was swapped. It's like a perception swap.
Well, when I hear swap,
that's why it would be a fake. That would be a fake, just a fake slab. Then.
Yeah, when I hear swap, it makes me think like the case was cracked open and the card was swapped out.
Right? No, they actually used.
Which I don't think was the case on the cards. On the comics, correct me if I'm wrong. Is the assumption that like they basically bought a lower grade or had like a green or purple label and essentially cracked the top open and just swapped the label? Yes. I assume that's what we're thinking. Okay.
Yeah.
Because on the difference between a swap and a pure fake is like you pointed out, Manu, like on the PSA things, like PSA has, and a lot of the grading companies do, have security features built into the case to help you make better informed decisions. And that PSA imprinted logo was not in the bottom right corner on the Star Wars cards, which makes me think that it was a fake holder, not a swap. You just have to educate yourself.
I mean, I know I've heard a lot of people like posting videos recently about maybe there's some change in the PSA cases and they're a little easier to open up without showing damage than it used to be or something. I've seen a number of these like shorts of people doing it. So that's why I feel like swaps are maybe a concern for some people right now on the card side as well, which is interesting. I still think if you know because the comic cases sound like they're so hard to open, with the card cases seem like they're maybe like
setting them up.
I know I was thinking about
that. Sunny Day. I appreciate what you're saying here. Sunny Day in other words is saying, just say who it is. You're already showing so much evidence of this and stuff. Like just telling us to be careful isn't enough. Sunny Day, use some search engines. There's plenty that we have mentioned and shown. You'll connect the dots. It's very simple.
Yeah. Well, going back to just what is an individual supposed to do in seeing all this, because there's lots of scammy eBay sailors, there's lots of shady business going on at all times. Is this something that does the blame fall on the grading companies for continuing to make products that are easily uh, whether they're swappable or you can replicate them? Is that something that mostly falls on them, or is at the end of the day, is this an individual problem? And if you're going to be buying stuff, you got to learn how to grade. You got to learn how to look at cards. You got to learn how to pick out slabs, which is really unfortunate because not everybody really wants to do that. I mean, if you're hanging out in the chats today, which shout out to you guys for hanging out on the Saturday night, we're all pretty hardcore. We're into this, so we've learned grading. We've kind of been able to identify slabs. But most people, when you go to your average card show or your average Comic Con or something like that, and there's just like a casual fan that wants to buy something because they think it looks cool, they're not going to be able to really discern what is a fake slab versus not, or they're just on eBay, they're just buying stuff. I'm like, oh, that's a cool Star Wars card. Let me pick it up. What is an individual to do here?
What you just said, an individual needs to, well, not everyone's going to, of course, right? Not everyone's going to be an advanced collector, a very careful buyer. Like we always talk about, or, I'm always met with the fact that people say, but Manu, a lot of people are just casual collectors. And casual collectors, unfortunately, are in a position to get taken advantage of. If you're not going to learn how to identify a tampered with slab, if you're not going to use the scans available from the grading companies to compare, with the item that you're buying, well, then you will possibly be taken advantage of. At the end of the day, people need to become more sophisticated if they care about what they're buying or if they care about the money they're spending. I like to call it an enlightened collector. You have to become an enlightened collector. And since everyone's not going to do it on their own or know to do it on their own, I think it's important for situations like this where the four of us or us individually continue to talk about it, because every time we mention it, someone new is going to become aware of it. And that again is creating more enlightened collectors. And that's going to make the job more difficult for the scammers. And certain dealers should also do a better job of investigating their inventory rather than just being so quick to move it, right? Because sometimes the fraudulent stuff isn't just sold by the person committing the fraud. It happens to be resold and resold, kind of like with the the accidentally swapped out a CGC 316, like kind of like that. Like the seller themselves at a certain point in time can take some accountability and not sell something on. So I think, yeah, the education is definitely a big part of it. And Sunny Day, I totally know where you're coming from. Like I myself would have had some frustration there as well, but I just want to politely say I appreciate it. But there's enough information for you to connect those, so I hope that you do. But generally speaking, you just have to know. I mean, there's so many tips and tricks. Like I've heard Ryan say this a long time ago. I'm pretty sure it was Ryan, and it's a beautiful one. It's like if you're buying an expensive graded book, and let's say it's from an era where CGC doesn't have scans, right? So you can't look at the scan to compare the item that you're actually buying. And Ryan, correct me if you didn't say this, but this was a great tip from whomever I heard it from, but I think it was you, is that look at the grader notes and compare the defects that are written in the grader's notes to the book that you're buying. If it says 2.5-inch crease or something identifiable, and you can actually place that grader note to a visual that you're looking at of the item, you can then have confidence that you are buying what was graded by CGC. And if it's a recently graded item, they're going to have almost certainly a scan of it. Compare the scans. Take those additional steps. This is why I'm always I always harp on why I don't like these vaulting things and these quick exchange digital services of physical assets. Like, you're never even seeing the item. If you're pulling the lever at some mystery pack company and then you're selling the item back or trading it on a digital platform, you could be trading all this fake shit and you'll never fucking
we're
know.
looking for sponsors here.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
what are you talking about here?
I don't give a shit. I'm sorry. That is actually going to breed more careless collectors, people completely unaware, and it's going to create more opportunity for fraud. Because if you're never even getting the thing physically in hand, how are you supposed to inspect it for tampering? You're never going to know.
Yeah,
I
mean,
really want to know.
My other side.
I want to know.
I
want to know. I love the tagline. I want to know.
My other problem with that though is like I have the same issue with that as I do with like telling people that if they need to learn how to grade. If it's like not everybody wants to do that. Like for somebody to enjoy a hobby, they shouldn't have to become like an expert or like not necessarily like a full expert, but like still like to spot a fake slab, like you have to have looked at a lot of slabs. I mean, and you know, this stuff happens because like, I mean, there was just the thing I did the video on recently, which was the famous first editions Sensation 1 that like somebody paid $6,000 for on eBay, you know, because they thought it was a Sensation 1. It's like, even that type of stuff, like, you know, it's like, it looks so close and it tricks people. And it bothers me that we tell people like that, like, then you go and like, you blame the buyer where it's like, oh, you should have known better and that kind of stuff. And it's like, I kind of get it with raws, but to me with graded stuff, like then telling somebody that they have to learn like all the little like details on like a PSA slab to like know to check those. Like I remember the first time, what is it? GameStop started taking cards. One of the big YouTube channels went in and was trading some cards into them or selling cards to them. And they walked through their process of like what they have to check on the card, you know, and it's like all that type of stuff. It's like, it just, I don't know. It takes a lot of the fun out of the hobby, I think, for a big chunk of people, if they're having to do all these checks just to make sure you don't get ripped off by someone. But I mean, I feel like the people who should really want this type of stuff resolved are people at like sellers at card shows, because like, to me, like if I'm buying from someplace like Heritage or Comic Link or Comic Connect or whatever, I'm generally pretty confident in what I'm getting from that place. But if I'm buying from a card show and I don't have anything going, like, I feel like your likelihood of being scammed there is way, way higher. And it could cause, now granted, it doesn't seem like it because this card shows are doing amazing, but that could be the thing that ends up like hurting some of those venues, is that if people start losing faith in what they're buying, you know, like a lot of this all is built on trust. And when people start losing trust in the product that they're buying, that hurts everyone. So I don't know.
Would you say card shows are doing better than Comic Cons?
Well, yeah, I mean, there obviously are, but but like, that's what I'm saying. Like card shows clearly are doing very well right now, but this is the type of thing where if like, because I know there's a lot of fakes out there with PSA slabs, like a lot like the Moon Brions and that kind of stuff. But if it starts just like, if people start losing faith in things, they're going to look for more trustworthy sources to buy stuff. And then that starts hurting, you know, potentially some of those sellers. And like, I don't know, I think most people would want you know, like be able to have more faith in this. Now, somebody had asked the question, is this the grader's fault or is this the buyer's fault or whatever? I mean, I don't put the blame on the grading companies. I think they're always going to be behind on a scammer. A scammer is always going to be able to act quicker. They turn something over faster. You do start to blame them if they don't make changes because of that. You know, if they're having a bunch of scams done and like they don't make the effort to improve their product or whatever, then yes, then I think you can start blaming them. But if they are improving things, which I don't know if we've seen, then that at least would give me more confidence in those companies. But yeah, I definitely want to see that happen.
Well, speaking of the grading companies, them improving things and what benefits individuals versus dealers versus companies versus auction houses, I did want to talk a little bit about this interesting story. Shout out to Palm Beach Presser, who, if you guys remember, Palm Beach Presser was actually one of the first people to kind of call out Bengate, which if you guys are in the chat, you're not familiar with Bengate. Bengate is a situation that was at CGC where the comic books that were being housed in the CGC cases were seeing just a little bit of like almost like this banana pressure bend, which was causing very, very small spine ticks along the middle of the book once they were encapsulated. And Palm Beach Presser, who is a cleaner presser, does a lot of service, does a lot of submissions to CGC on behalf of his clients, was one of the first people that called saw that and called it out, along with Manu, and shout out to MJ Comics, who also might still be in the chat. But they had a show talking about that. And he recently had a conversation with Manu about PSA's cases, where he said that he does not want to crack any of the PSA cases. He doesn't think it's worth the effort because the cases are so hard to break open that he's not going to provide that as a service for his clients. And this is not me here to call him out. I just think that this is a very interesting thing, kind of related to what we're talking about, where he doesn't want to do it because it's a nuisance for his business. and he kind of like, expressed that he thinks that PSA design in cases that are too hard to break are actually bad for, his clients and the hobby and all that sort of stuff. Whereas on the other side, it's so funny because it feels like when we're talking about Reholdergate and all the situations going on, it was like, we need better cases like that are harder to break and all this stuff. And that was like the big uproar in the community. And now we've kind of feels like we've gone like 180 here, where like now people are like, these things are too hard to break. And I guess I'll kind of open it back to you, Manu, and maybe the floor, and maybe we can just touch on this a little bit. Like, I just find it fascinating that, there's no perfect solutions here. There's only trade-offs really in the hobby, and everyone has sometimes diametrically opposed things that they're looking for with some of these companies. But I digress. Like, what do you guys think about his stance on thinking PSA cases are too hard to break?
So shout out Ron. Shout out Ron. We did have, at first when he was talking to me about it, I found it humorous, because of everything that you just said. It's like, I love that the cases are they're actually impossible to get into without completely destroying them, right? And so you cannot put them back together, which is what we've just illustrated here. Is the problem is you could kind of tamper with the case, open it, and put it back together. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you're going to get sold something swapped out. Well, with the PSA comic book case, that is not a possibility. So I love that about it. But when Ron reached out to me, he said, Manu, do you know, like, we were just talking about opening the cases, and I said, what was your experience? And he goes, man, it's just far too difficult. The amount of money that I request, he has like an intake form, right, that you would fill out, and you would let him know what services you want him to provide. So his clients would fill these forms out. And from what he told me, in the CGC CPR section, meaning you're going to submit a slab, he's going to crack it out, press and clean it. He charges $5 to crack out a CGC slab. And he said, man, I wouldn't even do these PSA slabs. And I'm speaking, about a conversation we had in private, but I think this is okay for me to discuss because, again, I found it comedic until we had a serious conversation about it. And he said, I wouldn't even do this for $50. I'd probably have to charge more. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And I thought, but that's a good thing. And he said, well, not, for the services that my clients want. They love regrading books, right? And so what he went ahead and said to me is that he had spoken to some of his clients and said, if you're going to submit to PSA, if you disagree with the grade, it's just going to have to stay in there, right? Because it's really difficult to get this thing out. And I was
you could just say like, you've got to crack it out yourself.
Hey, someone else said that to me too. Yeah, that's true. What was it? No, someone else actually suggested that as well. Like, just tell the client to crack it out and send it. And so, but what it inspired me to do, because he's not the only one cracking PSA slabs, and PSA cracks PSA slabs, and it inspired me
and
to reach
CGC
out.
cracks them. Like we know, and
I want to know. I want to see a video of them cracking that one out because they didn't show it. That little bit in that video where they're lifting a thing, I don't even know if that's the PSA slab that they're putting in there for a quarter of a second being lifted. But I did speak to some folks over at PSA, and they were very kind to provide a bit of a step-by-step, not something that I'll be sharing publicly at this point, but I definitely wanted to communicate this back to Ron so that Ron could possibly try a couple of different things to make it easier for himself. And we just recently had a conversation after this conversation that we're discussing, and I communicated to him what an individual in that department at PSA had communicated to me, and Ron grabbed a tool that was suggested, and he's going to see if it's actually easier than it was the first few times, because I personally would love for things to get to a place where the pressers are not refusing PSA slabs, because of course people do want to crack out slabs. I get it. But the security of the case for a collector that is satisfied with their item and doesn't have a reason to crack it out, well, that's a huge plus. So tying it back to what you said, and I want to ask Neo and Ryan their opinion, just like you said, Swag, is like, what's more important? Like, there's no perfect, but which one might be more important? The difficulty in cracking it out or the ease for the sake of people that want to resubmit?
I mean, to me, it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. It just has to be that it's obvious that it was cracked. Like to me, that's what it comes down to. So it's like, if you could make a slab that is easy to crack open, but it is blatantly obvious when it is cracked open, that serves the same purpose. If you can't do that, like if they're completely exclusive, then I would say the PSA slab would be the preferred option. I would rather have it be the way that it is obvious that it's broken.
Can I say,
agree.
Ryan, though, like let me touch on that though, because that's the whole like tamper-proof, tamper-evident situation,
Mhm.
where it's like, but doesn't that kind of bring us back to what we were previously saying, where like now I have to be able to look and identify, oh, this case has been tampered with. Oh, I see this little crack here. Like, I understand if you're saying like obviously there's a massive crack in it, like, oh, it's okay, it's obvious. But like, what if it is just like, I heat gunned the corner and I just lifted it and then slid it out and did
Well,
the
then
whole
it's
thing.
not
And
then it's
yeah,
not
like,
tamper-proof, right? Like if you can do what the Swapgate person was doing, that is not a tamper-proof slab.
No.
You know, like that
right.
fails that
But
test.
weren't you, sorry, maybe I misunderstood, but weren't you saying that like tamper evident is okay?
Well, but that's why I said it has to be obvious, and it's like something like that
Okay.
where you're having to be able to inspect and look for like glue, or like, or like where somebody has cleaned up like a crack or something like that. That doesn't count. It's got to be something like, to me, it's like tamper obvious would be whether it's like a sticker along the side that breaks and you can't replace it, or like things like that. But whatever it is, like it's something that has to be very clear to just anybody that goes in and sees this, that something is wrong here. And if that's broken, then the only option you have, if you want to sell it, is to send it back into CGC to get reholdered, or whoever to get reholdered.
Yeah, I'm with Ryan on this one. I mean, I'm pretty sure I heard everything that he said, and I think I agree with it all. I like the impossible to open slab versus one that it would be easier. Like, I mean, but the main point is, if you open up a PSA comic book slab, there's severe signs that it has been done, and you're not going to reseal it and sell a lower graded book within it. And I think that was the point. And I'm quite happy that we've arrived at that place. I'm not going to repeat this comment here, but Sean, you got to look at some more content. What is Dennis? What's Dennis's YouTube channel?
Wonderworld?
Wonderworld. Take a look at Wonderworld Comics. I think he submitted 300 books to PSA. And take a look at the 10 or 15 videos he has. It's going to be quite a different experience than the isolated scenario that you're describing here. I know plenty of people that didn't get the grades that they thought they were going to get a bunch of 9, 8s, and 10s, and they got on. The grades are honest, but just take in some more content. Some things are just skewed for intentional reasons.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I didn't see what his comment was, but I can kind of guess based on that conversation.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, I feel like the grading has been fair, and I never really hold companies to the 9, 9, 10 type grade. Like, that isn't the company to me. It's like, that is the fringe. If you want to deal with 9, 9s and 10s, so be it. They're fun to talk about, but it's fringe on the collecting side. It's fringe on the grading side. Like, that stuff doesn't matter to the vast majority of the hobby, other than it just being the thing that people like to complain about, and like focus on as like the scam of grading or whatever. Like, the stuff that matters is like, what does an 8 look like? What does a 9.2 look like? What does a 5.5 look like? And from what I've seen with those, they seem fair. It's like I've said, like CGC, CBCS, and now PSA, they're all in the same ballpark. They do have differences, like in certain areas. Like I've said, like CBCS absolutely grades easier on the low end. You can see it over and over and over again on the low end. Like, I've seen split spines, detached covers, get a 3.0 from CBCS. You will never, ever get that from CGC. And so it's like, you've got to know some of those things. But for the most part, I see very, very, very similar grading across the board.
Plus PSA.
Bob, any last words on tamper-proof
their
cases?
Their graders notes are so detailed. It would be so hard for them to be super wild on the grade.
Right now, PSA absolutely has the best graders notes. I mean, CBCS is close, but PSA seems to be the best detail, then CBCS, and then CGC is like, they're quite a ways down from either of those.
Regarding the
big
case
Shill,
stuff, I agree
Shill
with
Ryan right there.
I agree with Ryan.
I'm supposed to be shilling for CGC, but like, yeah, their graders notes are the worst of the three. There's no question on that.
I'm just going to say, regarding the case stuff, I agree with Ryan Manu. Like, we should want something that's more difficult to get into. You should be able to get into it if you really have to, but it should show clear signs that you can't. I mean, like literally go back wasn't it a year ago when the Swapgate thing happened, like almost to the day? Wasn't that late? Wasn't that December?
2
When that all
years
went
ago,
down?
It was
maybe,
2
to the
years
day.
ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
2 years
So
now.
2 years ago, we were all sitting on a live stream complaining about, oh my God, it's so easy to get into these cases. And now here we are 2 years later. Oh, it's too hard to get into these cases is kind of comical.
It is.
I
it
mean,
is a
the
little
other
comical.
problem though with it being too hard to get into them is it like it gives more ammunition to the never slabbers where they're like, oh, it's in its plastic tomb, you know. I don't need to hear that. Like that's at least one nice thing with the like CGC type cases is
You
like you
can
can crack
free
those
it if
things
you
open
want.
instantly, you know, if you want them out there. And so there's no
Yeah.
reason to complain about
Well,
that. But yeah,
I wonder
Yeah.
how much of it is though that people just haven't cracked the code yet on it and just come up with the slabs really haven't been in the wild that long.
Correct.
Like people will figure out like an efficient way to do it, and then information will get passed around.
it might be
because-
maybe you need like a sharpened down screwdriver, so you actually
Yeah,
have like
you
a
just
much
need, like, a
tighter
certain
tip
different
or
set of
something like
tools.
that. I mean, it may be something simple.
Well,
like
I know
that.
exactly what you need. I just didn't want to say it publicly. I didn't know if that's what I was supposed to do. But yeah, there's stuff. You know, it's still going to ruin the slab, but that's the point. But it's going to make it easier
Yeah.
to open it. You don't have to just fumble around with 15 different tools because you don't know the specific one to be,
Well, like
using.
I mean, like card cracking. I mean, until more recently, where it seems like maybe it's gotten a little easier. Like people would use those like tile clippers, you know, and that absolutely just destroys the slab. And maybe it's something similar that they're recommending for PSA comic slabs.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Well,
But I agree. I think maybe there's just not enough in the wild and not enough experimenting has been done. Sorry, Swag.
I was going to say, I think the moral of the story is that you have to learn how to grade your slabs.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on now to the last topic, or not last topic, but next topic, which is, it's been a week since we've had our Superman #1 sale. And I felt like,
yeah.
well, we got to, at least cover what happened because we talked about it the time before it actually went up for sale. And lo and behold, the most valuable comic book ever to be sold, the greatest comic in the world, besides Darkhawk, Superman #1 in a CGC 9.0, selling for $9,120,000. Comic books are back.
Man.
What do you guys think of the sale?
I mean, it blew me out of it blew me out of the water. Like in terms of like what I was expecting for that one, because I did not think it would set the record, and I didn't even think it would beat the mile high. And so the fact that it set the record by 50% and just crushed the mile high. I mean, obviously it doesn't mean, comics are back just because it's like, it's a different market. And I get that, but I also like, it does what you want it to do for the average person. I've seen so many articles and posts and whatever from all the different news agencies and everything talking about this. I've seen videos. It was like I think it was a Bloomberg TV YouTube channel video where they were talking about collectibles and investing in collectibles. It's just like, it gets more face time out there for comics. And so that is the value that it adds. And I mean, I know some people think like, oh, there is no like trickle down with that, but there absolutely is, getting eyes out there on stuff like this.
I want to ask everyone, but a friend said the same to me, sent me the sale and said, what do you think this means for the overall, just general collecting market? And I was like, hey, more or less for like, items that are nowhere near the value of this, it really doesn't mean much for those, but obviously it's great for exposure to the collectible market, but it's great for the grading companies and auction houses. Like for them, this was a huge billboard. They got way more than their money's worth out of it. It's a business move, this sale, it's not necessarily the most organic sort of feeling sale, but it's certainly the agendas, and I'm not saying for better or for worse, played out beautifully for them, right? Like
it's the first thing I see on CGC's page every time I go there.
Right.
it's like right up front and center, like right when you log in.
It's so
they marketed this thing like crazy. They were on top of this. I mean, it's no coincidence that literally the instant the hammer closed, like 100 articles went live. Which goes to show you, like, they knew this was going to be a world record. All they had to do with, like, all the people that were posting these articles, like you said, Ryan, the Bloombergs and things like that, is just, like, report to them the number. So they really did a good job, like, prepping this. And the idea is to make it a big promotion, make it a big, like, casual headline for like all the normies out there. It's like really funny because, I have all these friends in my real life who like, they know I do comic book YouTube and they know I like comic books, and all these people like that are just like my high school friends and stuff sent me like these articles of like, hey Mickey, did you see the Superman one? It's like, yeah, I've been
Yeah.
talking about this thing for weeks. Like, I
Yeah.
know, but it just goes to show that it hit those types of people as well. And that was intentionally done. That was intentional to get people excited about it. And anyways, carry on, Manu. I kind of jumped over you.
No, I love that. Thank you. I agree with you. The question, I was wasting a lot of time to get to this question. The question was, do you think this possibly does more like direct effect on original art than other comic books? Because very few comic books are in the price range of a lot of the original art that we see selling. Like, doesn't this encourage that collector more than it does like someone buying a $5,000 comic book?
I wonder if so you're saying if you
Because of the
see a
category of
number like
buyer,
this,
because of the amount of money that you're spending, this shows a lot of confidence in the higher end thing, which a lot of what we've been seeing selling for $200,000, $700,000, $1 million has been art pieces. So I felt like this kind of inspires more confidence in someone investing in art right now than it does necessarily in like key books.
I think it depends. I mean, I feel like there is crossover, and there's definitely the people that collect comic books and also buy what we'll call it comic art and fantasy
Right.
art. But I do wonder how related they are. Meaning, like, is there really the person that has the budget that wants to buy both of these things, that they're dipping their toes into the art and comics thing? Or are there people who just want the comics and there's people who just want the art? And I'm not
Yeah.
really sure, how much actual crossover there is, or if one is a big indication of the other. I will say anecdotally that it felt like the last couple of platinum heritage auctions, the comic books were really down and the art was really hot. And I felt like, at least from the conversations I had with some of the people in the art world, they felt like this last platinum art side was, if not like scorching hot, it was just kind of more like, all right, now we're kind of seeing a couple deals, or maybe there's ones that underperform, quote unquote, especially in the mid range, and not necessarily like the higher edge, the higher case items. And then the comic side did pretty well. So maybe people have moved their money back into comic books, at least at the high end. Anyways, that's sort of like my anecdotal feel of what happened.
Whatever the FU money is buying is what this did a lot for.
Right.
Yeah. And Snick's with us, Zatari's with us, and he's an art expert here. And yeah, he says it definitely must have helped some OA as well. I agree. A lot. It had, but generally a positive effect overall, and it did great for the auction houses and the grading companies.
Yeah, and like there was a comment in in the chat about like what would it have cost to get this graded? How do they determine fair market value? I mean, I can almost guarantee you CGC did not. I mean, we don't have any like real visibility into that, but I can almost guarantee you CGC did not charge them as a like $9 million book, but they probably charged it as a $5 or $6 million book, because there's that $5.3 million 8.0 sale out there as a reference point. So it would not surprise me if, now granted, you never know on like the super high end stuff like this, because like we say, like CGC wants to have this book in their slab, because it gets all this press. So maybe they work out a backroom deal, and get it for a better price. But if they paid what everybody else is paying, they probably paid roughly 3% of the value of that book. And so at $5 million, what is that?
100,000.
$150,000,
4%.
Like,
Yeah.
so,
yeah.
Well, see, like, because I doubt they're going to pay the 4%. They're going to get like, whether it's
Sure.
the dealer price or the, whatever. Like, if you're not going to spend $150, you're like, no, I'm not going to buy the $150 like premium account to save.
Do you think?
like
Do you
50
think?
grand. They might
the
be
guys
cheap enough.
who found?
Oh my
Do you
God.
think the guys who found this book? Wait. Do you think the guys that found this book one day just woke up to an email where it's like, "Oh, CGC upcharged me for my submission"?
Oh God, like that. Like all my jokes about like comic collectors being like just like the cheapest people. Like I could see someone using the free submission to send this in because they didn't want to pay the $150 for the premium account or whatever, and then they pay an extra
Yeah.
50 grand to get created. Oh god, I would laugh for a long time if I found out that is how that played out. But
This this right here that Zatari said, this is just for fun conversation. This is actually hilarious to me. He says, I really wonder if there was a deal worked out with CGC to where they paid post-auction rather than pre-auction. Let's just say the people that found the book don't have the money to grade this book. And it's a great deal for CGC because CGC doesn't have to guess what value to charge. If CGC could say, we'll grade it for free, we'll send it to auction for free, we'll market it for free, but we'll charge you 3% of what it ends at. And that way,
Yeah.
I mean,
I would
normally
think
they'll
it
do it
most
through
likely
Heritage.
happen that way
Like,
because
Heritage will.
I
Heritage
feel
will
like they
front
white
it.
gloved it.
I see. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we've heard of auction companies very openly talk about providing that sort of a service. Not everyone has $250,000 to grade a book that they just found.
Yeah. That's why a lot of people will do. Like they'll go through. I know. I'm sure Heritage does it, and I think Comic Link does that. Like they'll just back it out of your sale, your price or whatever that you get paid at the end.
Do we know who bought
What do you think,
this?
Rob?
Is there any?
I have
Any
no idea.
inkling of
Somebody
the
said
buyer?
something in the chat, but I didn't know what that was. So
I don't
know
know
what's
who bought
interesting?
this book. Oh, sorry.
Something that maybe we'll talk a little bit more about, like when we talk about card shows versus Comic Con shows. But the people who collect trading cards and sports cards are way more public with their collectibles in general than comic people are.
Yeah.
So I just kind of feel like the person who bought this, like, yeah, we'll just never really find out. Whereas, like, I could see a world where like a sports card collector would buy it, and like they would go on camera with like Ken Golden or something like that. It's just a very interesting, like, kind of behavioral thing.
They put the card on a chain, like the chart or like the illustrator.
They walk out
Pikachu
on their
illustrator.
WWE entrance.
Yeah, it would be on an Instagram page on an IG reel somewhere if this was the card world within like 30 seconds of the auction ending.
Our friend Tom says, do you guys think this is a true 9.0? To that, I will say, watch like the last third, the last quarter of last week's episode. There's some interesting stuff in there. That's how I want to answer that one. But if you don't know where, just DM me. I'll send you a link to that portion of it.
And great pickup on that, because speaking of last episode, there is something that we did find out about the Fantast book. Yeah. Which, if you guys remember, in the last episode, we did talk about the Fantast Superman. Shout out to them and their collection. If you guys know that story, you can kind of check out the documentary Selling Superman. But there was a post that Darren had made that was talking about how he had heard from Matt Nelson that maybe his book was going to be getting a bump. And we kind of called it out a little bit as being like, wait a minute, how could there be conversation of his book getting a bump and all that? But for the record, we heard from Matt Nelson, and he corrected that and let me know, and also Manu know, that definitely that is not what he said at all. And he himself was like, Darren, what do you can't say that. Like that makes me look so bad. Like, what the hell was that? So he himself knew the optics of that post. So it was a mistake on Darren's part. Clarification. Yeah. There was no what do you call it? Like a smoke-filled room conversation about getting a free point on his Superman 1. So we'll see. I think that Darren is still going to send it in to see if he can get clean pressed and bumped, but we'll see if that ends up actually happening.
Yeah, but that's the more appropriate sentiment, right? Like, it's going in to get clean press and bump to see if there's something to be considered for. He showed it to Matt to see if there was something to be considered for. But like I told Matt, I was like, Matt, I know you're not out door knocking, telling people that there's, bumps in their book, bring books back. And so we will definitely take a moment to clear that up. And it's funny because you and I have talked about this now. Darren did edit his caption, but when we pulled up his post, we didn't know he had edited his caption. So I was going off of memory what the post had previously said, what all of us and everyone in the community reacted to days prior, right? But already Darren had edited the post. But good. Nice to bring that up. I'm glad that we remembered to do that. And shout out Matt. It's fun talking to Matt Nelson. Good guy.
Well, crazy to see the Superman one doing really, really well. We'll see if it brings the casuals to the yard, because we're going to need casuals to the yard for Ryan to stop being such a big hater and just constantly posting, the downfall that is Ultimate Fallout 4 Djurjevic variant.
I still
Ryan,
wouldn't have bought it
you
at
know,
that price.
some people just want to watch the world burn. This
Yeah.
guy never misses an opportunity to shame post this book as it finds its way to Zero Town. What do you have to say for yourself, Ryan, and all the UF4 Djurjevic variant holders out there?
I mean, I said I called it. I don't know. Like, I mean, but it's not that I don't have anything against the book. You know, it's just like it's one of those books that, like, this was the whole thing with the whole comic boom period. Is that I remember my older brother described it really well to me when it was happening, and he had said the collecting community can't look in all directions at the same time. And so what you saw was like different books spiking over that like period of about 2 years. And this just happened to be one of the last ones. And so this one spiked pretty late and maintained a little longer. And it's just because, like, as people like went through, like, one of the first ones to go up was like TMNT. Like those were like kind of like late 2020, you started seeing TMNT books starting to climb. And then it just like it worked through like different collectibles. And this was one of the ones that we had already seen like all these other books just crashing. And you're just like, why are people still paying 40 grand, you know, for this book? And so
Yeah.
it's just like, it was calling out what we were seeing in other books, and that you should basically expect this to happen in this one. And that's what it's come to now. I mean, it's been like, we're like 4 years from that now. So you can look at it in a couple different ways. Like there's like, back then I was saying, I thought it would fall down to 5. Now, you know, maybe it's not going to get down to 5. We're a little further on. There's been more inflation, whatever. Maybe it's a little higher. Maybe it's a little closer to where it's going to hit the bottom, but it is still, you know, it does seem to be still kind of like trickling down a little bit, but most of those losses I think are baked in at this point. Again, it might still drop some. I don't feel like it's a book you have to rush out and buy. And I think that was the other thing we've talked about in some chats, is that just like once they started selling for a lot, and this happens, the prices, or not the prices, the census just exploded. You know, it's like when you have a book sell for 40 grand, people start looking for that copy, and they go like, oh, I better send this in. And then they get graded, and then they instantly hit the market. And so you start seeing those books drop back down. And, you know, so that just like what we saw with the West Coast Avengers, the first White Vision, you know, it's like the first few sold for like $1,000 or $2,000. And then they've fallen down to like $150 now, because the census was really small. People saw huge amounts of money. They all sent them in, and then the census blows up. And so you've got to be aware of that type of stuff, especially with moderns. Now, there are some moderns that their prices have gone crazy, and the census hasn't changed much. You know, you've got like that Amazing Spider-Man 667, the Delato variant. You've got the, what is it, X-Men 510, the Campbell sketch variant. You know, it's like those books, like their prices have exploded and the census has barely moved. And so it's like, that's how you know that book is legitimately tough to find versus some other books where when they blow up in price, the census goes with it.
Yeah. You know what? I just want to kick this one over to Neo here. Okay, maybe find a card cop. I just, you know, I find this book so interesting. And every time I cover it, I think I even make mention of that I just find it fascinating to talk about. Not so much the numbers themselves and the fact that it was once 40 grand and now it's 7,800 or whatever the case is, but the reaction within the community to it. And this will be something that maybe we talk about in like another stream or conversation or whatever, but there's something about this book that just gets people on teams. You know, people root against this thing hard and cheer for it hard, and everybody has an opinion on this one. And this is a book that even the people who are like kind of in the golden age side of the hobby, like, you know, this is the one modern book that they know about, and the one modern book they always have a hot take about, which is obviously like negative, but it's just funny. It's like there's tons of variants, there's tons of modern stuff, but this is the one that they love to, you know, talk about. And I'm just curious, Rob, is there any like cards that are like that? Do cards have teams? Do people cheer for certain ones and just like love the downfall of others? Is that like the Luka Doncic hype?
100%. Right now, a big one is the 89 Upper Deck Ken Griffey Jr. PSA 10, because it's gotten super hyped in price right now. Like it was, I don't know, like a 2K-ish card for a long time. And then earlier this year, it spiked up to 4K, and now it's been at 4K for a little while. So there's like teams of this is the stupidest thing ever. This should never be a $4,000 card, versus the team of, oh no, we're riding this thing to the moon. And like, this is the most iconic card ever of a certain generation. So yeah, you definitely see that in cards for sure.
Well, we'll have to see if this book ever bounces back. Maybe when we get another movie, people will get excited about Miles Morales and head over to a Comic-Con to buy comics once again. But until then, everybody's going to card shows, which let me see if I can kind of bring a little emphasis on this. I did a video the other day, which was this one right here, where I went to the front row card show in Pasadena, and I had to take that. My experience going to the card show was that it was so much better than going to a Comic-Con, and it was interesting because I wanted to make a video and talk about it, and I kind of thought that if I came in hot with this one, it was going to be like people were really going to be upset with me, calling out comic books and how Comic-Cons are run. But 99% of the comments in that video, at least to me, felt like overwhelmingly positive to my critiques of the Comic-Con show. And I just was curious if you guys had any thoughts on this, of the card show versus the Comic-Con show, and what is it going to take for Comic-Cons to get better? And I realize that like card shows are not perfect, but they're doing a lot more interesting things than Comic-Cons are. So I don't know. I'll throw it out to you guys if you had any thoughts on that.
I mean, yeah, we talked about this some in the chat as well, is that like one example of that would be Red Hood. Like his booth always looks awesome, and I feel like that draws people in, especially people that are maybe a little more hesitant, or newer into the hobby. Cause like, I don't know, just going up to a booth that's full of like old dingy boxes. Maybe you're just like, I don't know if I want to do that. Like maybe you feel like you're going to end up dealing with the standard comic book guy, like the Simpsons comic book guy, if you go up to that booth, versus one that feels all neat and clean and everything. And I don't know, that I think that there's a lot to be said about the presentation at these shows. Now, I know comics are much bigger than cards. I don't know how you get past that, because like with cards, you can have those really clean, like glass tops and everything. You can have tons of cards in there, and you can't really do that with comics. So I don't know what necessarily the solution is yet, but I feel like the presentation side is definitely something that could be adopted on the comic side.
I agree.
Rob,
I definitely agree with that.
why are card shows so much better?
Because we embrace the money. You said it.
That's what I'm saying. It's all about the money, guys.
We
need to embrace money so much better.
Yeah, we're not afraid to talk about cash.
He pulls out the big bill.
Look at this guy flexing.
50. Was that 50 over there?
Yeah, I got a 50 spot.
Who even are those? Even that's a rare find. That thing of 50.
We're not afraid to be transactional, and that gets a lot of play on social. Like it gets a lot of excitement. It gets people into it. Now, that's a blessing and a curse. You could say that people care more about the cash and the money aspect of it than they do the collectible aspect of it, and that has its own host of problems, to be sure, as we've seen on the card side of the world. So there's definitely some negatives to it, but the pros is that it does bring a certain sizzle to it. And Swags, you've talked about it before. You bring up anything value based, or imagine walking up to a comic book dealer and like openly talking about like, oh, well, here's what like the last 5 AF-15 2.5s did across these various different selling platforms. Here's where you have yours priced $20,000 over that. Like, I would like to give you money for this book. Can we, figure out a good price? And they look at you like you have 5 heads.
I mean, that's always one of the tough parts with comics, is like, I feel like a lot of times you get those, and I don't know if this happens on the card side, but I feel like in comics, being priced well above market is much more common. And just because things don't move quite as often. And you just like, you feel like if the current kind of comps for it are, say, 20 grand, or let's do something more reasonable, like 1,000, and they've got it listed at 2,500. it makes you feel like the jerk coming in at, even if you offered over current comps, like say you were going to offer 1,200, like you really wanted it. But like I've been on live streams before where I see books like just something like crazy priced high, and somebody makes an offer where you're like, that was a good offer, but they get kind of crapped on, you know, like someone's like, oh, you're way too, you know, they kind of insult the offer when I'm like, that was a good offer.
Yeah,
You know?
I know
So,
exactly
like,
what you're
I
talking
feel like
about.
that kind of thing happens a little too often on the comic side.
I've been thinking about this because I didn't know exactly what you meant, because I've heard you say it so many times and it never connected for me, possibly because of, you know, the dynamic that I have with the people that I speak to most often. But, you know, I often hear you say, if you talk about money, you're going to get some, you know, some negative comments, so on and so forth. That hasn't been my experience, right? And so I always wondered, like, what does he mean? I talk about the money and the stuff all the time. I talk about how much is this worth? How much did I sell it for? This is what this sold for. And but then something Neo just said made it click for me. And well, I think it was a combination because Derek in the chat said, I need room, bro. Meaning like I need a little bit of room on that. I can't buy that for that price. And that in the comic book world, when you say something like that to your traditional dealer, they're so disgusted by that. And in the card world, they totally understand it. And in the comic book world, there's this other thing which I'm not a fan of, is I only want to sell this to a collector. Well, what do you care what someone does with it if you get the amount of money? Listen, I'm probably going to get beat up just for saying it. Comic book guys are going to attack me. But at the end of the day, I've never been that person like, are you looking to buy this to resell it, or are you going to keep it? I really don't give a shit. If I get the amount of money that I want for it, I don't care. In fact, the way that I am is I love the business side of things. I like hustling. I like the entrepreneurial side. So if someone comes to me and says, "Yo, they want to resell it later," I'm actually really empathetic towards that. That makes me want to discount it. You know, I want you to have a margin.
Yeah.
You're buying from me and you're going to make some money later. I fucking love that. Who doesn't like that? That's crazy to me. And in the card side of thing, everyone realizes that. They don't give a shit if you're buying it to hold it. They assume you're going to resell it. And in the comic book space, it's kind of the opposite. So that just found some clarity from me through this conversation. So thank you guys for having that conversation. And additionally, another thought that occurs to me is that maybe it's because also part of it is comic books is so much smaller in terms of content and everything than cards, like on the grand scale of cards, it's, you know, sports cards and TCG. So maybe just the sheer volume of content and transactional content that's out there has normalized that conversation in a way that in the comic book space, rather than transactional content, what you see is unboxings. You know, like you just see a bunch of damn unboxings. That's all you ever really see. And so it hasn't been normalized. It hasn't been put out there that much. Anyway, just wanted to throw some of what just happened in my head, and I appreciate it. And Sammy from Skeleton Keys with us, shout out. She said she's kind of here for the tea, the dirt, and she feels a little like, you know, I forgot the word she used, like dirty because of that. But you missed a bunch of it, so watch it back because we definitely put a lot of stuff out there.
Well, I mean, in terms of the like the content that's out there for it, I mean, there's one channel that definitely films their content. That's the Comic Den. I know they film their shows, but there are not enough dealers that do that, and maybe it's just because of the age demographic. Yeah, it's probably a big part of it, you know. But I know Mickey pointed this out. But there's a number of channels I already watch on YouTube that do this. It's like everybody is streaming their shows, you know, or they're making videos or whatever. And I mean, there's a couple good reasons for that. One of them is that it expands your audience. I know a lot of them, they'll make deals because of that, because somebody will reach out to them on socials, but you also like, you make money. Like some of these channels are huge on YouTube, like Bulbasaur. Like that's one of the ones I watch. I'm pretty sure that's new. Like he was like the first one, I think, in the comic in the TCG space that started streaming his shows. And a lot of people have, I think a lot of the copies came from him. And like he gets tens or hundreds of thousands of views. That's a pretty big income stream. And so like, that's another reason why those places do that. It's like, it's a big income stream to do that. And maybe if comic dealers understood that they could have this additional like income stream just by setting up a GoPro on the corner of their booth and running it during the show, like they might start doing it. I just think like maybe, you know, some people just, they don't have that knowledge that this is just another thing where you could just like, you don't have to hardly do anything and you instantly add another, you know, revenue stream to your business. And it also just like, yeah, like it's, I don't know what it is, but it's, I think it's just like relaxing, like watching those. I just generally enjoy watching those, those interactions and watching those sales. And if there was more comic stuff doing that, I'd watch those too. Like, I feel like there's some channels out there that could easily do that. I feel like Very Gary is one of the channels that could probably do that, given the shows he does and his content and everything. But yeah, I would definitely like to see more out there like that. I mean, if I sold at shows, I would do it. Like, I would see no reason not to.
Yo, could you imagine if Rob, man behind the red hood, started doing a YouTube? I would be watching that all the time. The amount of stuff he has, he's everywhere. He's a personality that I love in general. And like, oh, that would be crazy if he started to do it.
Shout out to Rob, great dude, friend of the channel. I've asked him so many times to come on my YouTube, and every time he's like, nah, man, like he doesn't want to get on camera. And I'm like, dude, get on camera. So everyone in the chat, everyone here on the panel, get into Rob's DMs, tell him Swaggelhouse needs him on the channel, and shame him into becoming more public.
Oh,
so
it's gonna
a little
happen
bit of
now.
caveat there. Yeah,
I love it. I love it.
One of the things that chat pointed out and that I was going to mention as well, one of the other big differences are, and it's right in the name, trading cards. Like in the card space, trading is so normalized of, like I bring whatever it is. And you talked about this in your video, Swag. Hey man, I'd like to get into this. I'll offer you this plus cash, or can we work something out here? And so there's a whole aspect of moving off inventory that you don't want to dealers in addition with cash, or maybe you're trading and getting books back and cash from the dealer, depending on which way you're going there. And I think that adds a little extra oomph to a card show. And then the other thing too, along the same lines is, and you don't get this at like your average local show, but like a larger size show, like the National or Fanatics Fest, or even like the bigger regional card shows like Philly or Chantilly, the show ends, and at a card show, you go get dinner and then you come back for a trade night. And there's like a whole other show after a show between just basically attendees. And Comic Cons aren't, I mean, I've been to New York Comic Con, I've been to Heroes Con. The show ends and that's it. That's the end of the show at 6 p.m. and everyone's gone for the day. At a card show, that would be unheard of. Like, the Dallas Card Show is basically a 24/7 trade fest in the lobby outside of the actual show itself once the show ends. So it's almost like a 24/7 event when you go to these larger card shows, and you don't see that in the comic book space at all. And that's
fun. It is interesting though, because a lot of the big dealers, like, I mean, we see this watching, people's posts and all that kind of thing. Like, a lot of them, I think they make a lot of their money in trades. It's like they ultimately have to sell some stuff, but the way they get their margins is trades. And that's why, like, a lot of, like, we always joke about the really high end books, like always going to dealers, like dealers keep buying them. And I think one of the big reasons they do it is because they get this big book that somebody else doesn't have the cash up front to get. And then they post it up, and it might take them 6 months or 8 months or whatever, but they, say it's $100,000 book, they get an offer for 150,000 in trade. Now they've got 150,000 in inventory for the 100,000 that they spent, and they're back in the black, and it's like, and I think, like, so it is very common, especially on the high end. I don't know as much on the, like kind of like the lower end, but yeah, I mean, I see all kinds of big trades out there getting posted about. And so it's, I think,
a lot of it too in cards on the trade front, from what I've seen versus comics, are people are more reasonable on like trade value versus actual value. So like that same deal that you just proposed, like you would need 150K in inventory to get a 100K book. In cards, that would probably be a lot closer, those two numbers
tighter
together.
Yeah.
And that was one of the other things I wanted to comment on. I feel like that's part of the reason why cards end up being so much, maybe it's like entertaining to watch, is that the card market moves so much faster than the comic market. If you aren't moving stuff fast, you're screwed. Like, you could be sitting on, a huge loss, like real easily, if you aren't turning over like almost all your inventory every show. I feel like I see that in a lot of these, like they're turning over so much inventory every single show, because if they don't, you're going to get wrecked.
Yeah. And that's the nature of the sports, particularly because you have events, you have a football game that happens every Sunday that could drastically shift the value of a card. like that. If a guy goes out and tears his ACL, you could have a 50% loss in the blink of an eye to no fault of your own. Comics, you're not going to have that as much. It's a much slower moving market. But yeah, most card dealers that are doing it full time, they're just grinding out 5%. They're not trying to get into a book at a good price and then hold it for 8 months until a new movie trailer drops. Right. They're just getting into it for 95,000 and selling it for 100,000, or getting into it for $90 and selling it for $100. And they're just repeating that over and over and over again as quickly as they can.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's another channel I watch where that I feel like that's what you see, that because like they'll buy at maybe like 80%, and then they're almost never getting full comp when they sell it. Like they're almost never getting 100%. They're taking like 90 or 95%. So they're only making like $10 or $15 on a card and whatever, but they do it enough times, and you know that's their living.
Yeah, and something to that, you know. Go ahead, Rob. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we've talked about this before. The other advantage that cards has is the repack volume is insane, and you have those buyers that are just willing to spend the money to feed the repack machine. And comics has kind of only just touched that iceberg. They haven't really that hasn't gone as mainstream yet. But that almost builds in a floor on a lot of card values, because the dealer knows that they could just go sell it to a repack buyer for 90%. That's just going to gobble it all up.
I've been watching a lot of people opening Courtyard IO and the PSA, like the GameStop packs. That's been a thing that I've been seeing a lot of posted on YouTube recently, is like just like 15-minute videos of people opening like $1,000 in packs or whatever, you know, a bunch of $100 packs. And I don't know, like that's definitely getting a push lately on the socials.
Two things to kind of add to the conversation. One, shout out to Zazari, who says, kind of reiterating what you guys were just talking about. In economics, money needs to flow through parties for it to be healthy. Inventory tends to sit in comics and get stale. This is where dealers need to get better. I totally agree. If there's just not movement, then it just doesn't get exciting. And like you have to be able to kind of churn and burn. And how many times do you go to like the same dealer wall and it's like literally the same books that they've had for like 3 years? It makes me not want to shop with them. Or like if I go to a comic book store and it's got the same books in the same case that it's been sitting there for years, like, well, then I have no point in going back to that comic store. Exactly. Like part of the excitement is like every time I go into the shop, maybe there's going to be new books there, you know, or like go to a dealer, maybe there's going to be new books there. So dealers really, really got to do a lot more of that. And then number two, I thought that this was a really interesting comment that somebody left on my video, and I'm going to paraphrase. I kind of can't remember totally what they said, but it was something to the effect of like, for the longest time, dealers were kind of people that ran LCSs, and they were sort of the kings of their own castle and kind of just siloed to their local market. And they just operated in that bubble where they were like, well, I don't care that ASM 300 sells for X dollars on eBay. This is my price, and I've always been able to sell it for this price, you know, to the people that come into my shop. And like, they just exist in that ecosystem.
Right.
And I think that that's permeated through to where we are today, where, you know, a lot of times I think about like the dealers that have those 2021 prices on their walls. And I don't know, like sometimes I feel like these guys like don't even realize that their books are mispriced. Like that's how out of touch I think a lot of the comic dealers are. And it was just sort of my takeaway in going to the card show. I mean, a lot of things that I kind of already knew, but just seeing it in person, and it's just something I want to reiterate, that I'm like, you know, people talk a lot about how comics are dying. And I just feel like, you know, at the end of the day, what's going to kill comics is us. Oh, we don't catch up with what's going on, you know, and I think some of the dealers really got to step it up. And I'm done not shaming them. You know, it's like, it's been the same stuff. Like, fix your banner. Tuck in your shirt, comb your hair, take a shower.
Damn. So
I mean, look at your experience when you had a similar thoughts when you went to Burbank to the card right. shop. You know, when you went to Burbank, the shop, like you were like blown away of like, wait, this is how it could actually look like if things are done right. Now, Burbank, even in the card world, is an outlier. They are
that was like a super high end fancy shop, wasn't it? Like,
yeah, they're one of the best they're probably the best in the entire sports card world, but still compare that to whatever the number one comic book store is in the States, and it's probably not even remotely close.
Yeah, you know, that's interesting, because there is a charm to some degree of going into like that old dusty, you know, comic shop that's got boxes everywhere and all that, you know, sort of thing, and kind of takes you back to, you know, shops that were in the 80s, and that's all well and good, but like it's 2025. Like, how is it acceptable that you like walk into a shop and there's just like boxes stacked everywhere and you can't even like look around? And like, how many times have you like gone into a comic book store where like there's just like unpriced inventory that's just stacked everywhere? And I'm like, oh, so can I like dig in this box? They're like, and they're like, oh, no, none of that is, you can't look at that stuff. I'm like, okay, like why do you even have it here? Like, what is this? Like, how is this a business? You know? And it's just so many things that just make me scratch my head.
Yeah.
And well,
really speaking of shops, and it's a card shop, but it's a card and comic shop. Justin's with us. He says he's late, but he's here. He says, come see my shop. Yes, everyone in West Monroe, Louisiana, or make a trip to West Monroe, Louisiana. Check out Justin's shop. Check out the videos he's made on his, like, a phenomenally cool shop. So shout out to you, my man.
Absolutely. Shout out to Justin, sponsor of the Ungraded Truth podcast. One of the people that sent a super chat, which we really, really appreciate. Congrats to him with his store. By the way, you know, I know we talk a lot about people buying up pack rips and stuff, and Manu doesn't like them, but don't listen to him, because we are totally open to getting big shill money here on the Ungraded Truth podcast. But I'm just kidding, guys. Gentlemen, I think with that, you know, we've been going about 2 hours. We had another great show. Really quick, just to let everybody know, the last penny, someone might pay $5 million ever. You know what sucks about that? They should have totally just Willy Wonka that thing. Just printed these pennies and just like put them, just throw it out in the market and just have someone just like randomly discover it. That would be so cool. If you guys don't know that they're discontinuing the penny, and there's 5 pennies, I believe, that they have a little watermark, an omega symbol on it. And so like everyone is saying like, oh, this is the last penny ever made. Everyone's going to buy it. But unfortunately, they're just going to auction it, which is totally lame. But how cool would that have been if there was like a golden ticket penny situation? But anyways, keep your eye out for a penny in your pocket. You might get rich. Well, gentlemen, another great show. Manu and I have a party to go to. So we're going to call it from there. But thank you, everyone in the chat, for hanging out today. If you haven't already, head on over to the Ungraded Truth YouTube channel. Give that thing a sub. It is the fastest growing YouTube on the platform. This is factual. If you look at the data, you look at the stats, it is truthfully the #1 graded show and the #1 graded, #1 growing podcast out there. So definitely hop on board. Get on that.
Ryan McClay.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Any final words from the panel?
Go get some of that shill money at your little dinner you're going to.
Everyone be safe. Have a great night. Have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you for hanging out with us.
All right. We will catch you guys on the next show. Have a wonderful rest of your Thanksgiving weekend, and we'll see you next time. Detective Comics set a record for 1.8 million. Nobody really cares.
Who are annoyed that people are asking them questions, is this book banned? That question didn't exist a year ago.
Somebody submitting like 25 vintage books and getting 15 9.9s.
We always think, how could it ever get crazier? And then it always does.